All right. Thank you very much for that, Sebastian. Andy, it's good to see you again, brother. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to be here. Good to see you.
All right.
Former colleagues at Rolling Stone, and now you're at the LA Times in this new gig.
And
It's so cool to be here with you.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. But first, I want to talk about this amazing book that you put out. I'd argue it's really a vital story about the America that we live in today. And it's a story that's really well told. So,
Thank you.
congratulations on that. Let's get right to it, though. One of the most beautiful things I think you've accomplished with your journalism throughout the course of this case and with this book is that you've introduced us to the real Seth Rich. He was, in a way, like us. We're both
Hmm.
Midwestern kids who love politics. And
Totally.
I just want to know how you knew him before his death. And in the course of your reporting, what have you learned about him?
So this story began for me in a unusual way. You will relate to this as well as a fellow journalist. We don't usually embark on a story for the Los Angeles Times or ProPublica or our old employer Rolling Stone from a personal angle, right? I mean, we have
Right.
sources, we get tips, we have a beat that we cover. As journalists, we are not prone to have the jumping off point be our personal side, our personal lives. In some ways, that's a
Right.
different thing from what we do 9 to 5 every day. But with this
It,
book, it started in a personal place, which is that in the summer of 2016, mid July 2016, the day after Seth had been killed, I got a text from a friend. And it was a link to the local NBC news story reporting that this 27-year-old employee for the Democratic National Committee, Seth Rich, had been killed. Now, Seth was not a close friend of mine. He was not a good buddy, but he was someone that I knew, someone that I had played on a crappy weekend soccer team with, someone that I had a lot of friends in common with. And so when I
right.
learned that he'd been shot and killed in Northwest DC, for a while, it was this very personal feeling for me. I had a personal reaction to it as, like you said a second ago, a Midwestern guy who lived in DC and cared about politics. And I followed
Yeah.
the story for a few weeks with that sort of personal hat on, just feeling really bad for his family, feeling a sense of there, but for the grace of God go I. I've walked home in the early morning hours from a bar. I've, walked and gone to the same
Yeah.
bar that he was at. There was just a feeling of, gosh, that could have been me. It could have been any one of my friends. And it
Yeah.
wasn't,
Same here.
yeah, right. It was something that, that felt unfortunately familiar
Yeah.
to some of us.
It,
And
yeah, it felt all too
yeah,
relatable. Yeah.
right, exactly. And so I was in that mindset for a couple of weeks there in the summer of 2016 as it related to Seth. And it was only about a month or so later that I had this inflection point, this switch flipped in my head. I went from seeing Seth's death and thinking about his life from a personal level, from a almost like a peer, to
Hmm.
a reporter, because I wanted to understand what were these things that I was starting to see happen online. Why was I starting to see Seth's name trending on Twitter? I mean, this was just a guy that I knew, in
Hmm.
passing, and that I had a lot of friends in common with, who was a regular DC guy, and yet why is he all of a sudden in the mouth of Julian Assange from WikiLeaks or on Fox
Right.
News? And so it starts from this personal place for me, but fairly quickly I realized that no, this is a story. This is a big story, and I just need to find out why what's happening is happening.
Indeed. Indeed. So, just the basic facts of the case, of course, if people aren't familiar with them, Seth was 27 years old when he was killed. He's walking home, like you said, from a bar in Washington, D.C. in the early morning of July 10th, 2016. What can you briefly sum up what happened to him, and then later on what people said happened to him?
You have to take your mind back to the summer of 2016. There are a couple of key pieces of context. You got to know what was in the air at this moment when Seth is shot and killed in DC. So the presidential campaign is in full force. Hillary Clinton has just barely won a really contentious primary, taking the Democratic nomination over Senator Bernie Sanders. And that was a really bruising, polarizing fight inside the Democratic Party. And then in the Republican Party, businessman and real estate impresario and reality TV host Donald Trump has come out of basically nowhere and swept aside senators and governors and other Republican officials and won the presidential nomination for the Republican Party. So we're in this chaotic up is down, down is up moment. Seth is, again, walking home from a bar, 3, 4 in the morning by the time he gets home. He is talking on the phone, which he probably should not have been doing that late at night. He's going back to a neighborhood in DC that has had a crime problem all summer long. There were a series of, in some cases, nearly identical armed robberies in Seth's neighborhood in Northwest DC that matched in description almost, to a T. It's kind of eerie in a way. 2 guys, one of them armed, robbing people specifically for their cell phones, and in addition to some of their valuables. But what you see in these after incident reports is robbing them from their cell phones. Seth is shot about a block from his house, again, in the early morning hours of July 10th, 2016. He is rushed to a hospital, but does not survive. The wounds he suffered from being shot in the torso, where all those vital organs are too severe to save him. The police almost immediately say, we were investigating this case. We do not have any suspects yet. We don't have any possible leads, at least leads that they were going to disclose publicly. But all the indications then, and all the indications every day since then, suggest that this was an armed robbery, attempted armed robbery that went bad. That Seth might have resisted. He might have tried to fight back. But when I talked to police, current and former detectives, prosecutors, almost all of them, to a person, said, yeah, this seems like a pretty classic case of wrong place, wrong time, robbery gone wrong. This, was not especially out of the ordinary, unfortunately, for Washington, D.C. in the summer of 2016. So that is the context. Those are the immediate facts of the matter. But what happens almost immediately, within 24 hours, 48 hours of Seth being killed and his passing being announced to the public, are the creation and spread of rumors and theories about what really happened, alternate theories of why Seth died. And these theories range from that he was a whistleblower inside the DNC who was trying to expose some kind of corruption within the party. There are theories that there was a government hit squad that took him out because he was going to expose some corruption. Also, that there were hit men hired by the Clinton family that took him out because he posed some kind of threat to Hillary Clinton. Almost immediately, you see these leaps of logic, these fantastical notions appear on Twitter saying, you know what, there's something more here. This doesn't smell right to us. We think that something suspicious, something nefarious happened here. It's incredible. I mean, I went back and retraced all of this stuff. I recreated the origins of these conspiracy theories in the course of doing the book. And this stuff happened almost immediately. Again, within hours of Seth's employer announcing that he had passed away, people online are jumping to, something's not right here. Something's fishy. We don't believe the official story.
What's shocking to me in reading the book and being, reminded of everything that happened in great detail is that who started it? Because we talk a lot about, Trump folks who spread these rumors, Fox News and whatnot. We'll get to them. But who actually were the first people online, espousing these wild and, unprovable theories?
Yeah, this was one of the revelations of a kind that I feel like came out of writing the book. The
Mhm.
Seth Rich conspiracy theories would eventually come to dominate the right hand side of the political spectrum, the pro Trump online communities that grew in force in 2016, Fox News, Roger Stone, the Republican dirty trickster and advisor to Donald Trump. That's where the Seth Rich conspiracy theories would ultimately really find a huge audience. But they did not
Right.
start there. They started on the opposite end of the political spectrum, on the far left. When I went back and again recreated and tried to pinpoint the moment when a conspiracy theory comes to life, where is that origin point? I found that it was
Mhm.
first spread or first created and then promoted and spread by supporters of Senator Bernie Sanders, who was the more progressive candidate in the Democratic Party for president in 2016, and also among supporters of the Green Party candidate on the ticket that year, Jill Stein. Now,
Right.
I can imagine some people saying, well, how do you know those people were real? Weren't they bots? Were they Russians? Were they someone else? And what I will tell you is for the book, I went back and found some of these people who were some of the earliest promoters of the theory that Seth did not die in a wrong place, wrong time, armed robbery gone wrong, that something more
Yeah.
sinister happened. I went back and interviewed those people. I found them. They're real people. And in some cases, their tweets and their Reddit posts are very much still on the internet. You can go find them to this day. Some of these
Mm.
people said, oh, that was the heat of the moment. Things were, in flux. There was almost like a sense of vertigo in that 2016 heady moment. But I don't
Mhm.
really know if I believe that stuff today. That's some of the folks that I tracked down. But then there are some who say, I believe this as much now as I did then. I might believe it even more now than I did then. The Clintons can't be trusted. Stuff like this happens in politics all the time. So
Mm.
these were real people in a lot of cases. And I
Mhm.
think that the really heated Democratic primary primed some folks online to
Mhm.
want to believe that Seth's passing was something more than what it was. And, an interesting little footnote to
Mhm.
this, I didn't actually get this in the book, but I've always found it interesting. You'll, of course, remember the birther conspiracy theory.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
this baseless and frankly racist conspiracy theory that Barack Obama was not an American citizen and was thus ineligible to run for president and illegitimate when he got elected president. Well, in the course of doing
Mhm.
my reporting and research for the book, what I found was there were email lists in 2006 or 7 that were populated by supporters of then Senator Hillary Clinton. She might have been a senator, or she had been a senator. I can't remember if
Yep.
she's
She was
senator
senator.
anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, she was senator in New York. Yeah,
Yep.
and
Yep.
there was some evidence that the birther conspiracy theory, if not originated, certainly took root
Oh yeah.
early on among supporters of Hillary Clinton. Not
Yep.
necessarily the far right, where it would it would find again a much bigger audience. Donald Trump basically catapulted himself into the national discussion, pushing this vile birther conspiracy theory, but it found some traction with Democrats early on. And so I think,
Right.
these theories are not unique to one political party or the other. They're not unique to one ideology or the other. Humans are wired to suspect things, to spin these fantastical stories. It's just the way we are. And I think that's what we saw with the Seth Rich case.
And so, I mean, it's incredible that, you talk about basically what we're talking about is critical thinking and how people are wired essentially to do, to think critically, but it's completely misapplied here. As you've noted in the book and previously in your reporting, the case that Seth Rich was some DNC plant, it was some DNC guy who was trying to expose what the crooked dealings of Hillary Clinton. That case falls apart really, really easily as the birtherism argument. How did that, essentially take hold? I mean, frankly, what were people thinking?
I think people wanted a story to be real because it resonated with them in a way that the facts didn't. They wanted a story that confirmed what they already suspected in their gut to be real. I mean, there are a lot of people out there, for some good reasons and for some completely ill-suited reasons, who think that the Clintons are corrupt, or think that the Clintons have, enriched themselves during their long time in office. There was a sense baked in already, pre-existing the 2016 presidential race, long pre-existing it, that the Clintons could not be trusted and that they did corrupt and nefarious things. And when you're already primed to believe that, it's not that big of a leap, incredibly, to think, and maybe even to post on Twitter or Reddit, that, whoa, this DNC staffer who was killed and they don't know who did it, he, worked for the Democratic Party, of which Hillary Clinton was about to become the front-running candidate. This doesn't seem right to me. This is suspicious. They're primed to want to set aside evidence that contradicts that gut feeling and prioritize the ideas, or maybe the kernels of truth here and there, that back that up. And to be clear too, just to say speak a moment about Seth. Seth was a political junkie. He was raised on the West Wing in that sort of idealistic, crackerjack, whip smart, walk and talk aesthetic and idea of how politics and how government worked. He wanted to work for the DNC. It was a dream of his to work for the DNC because he had volunteered and worked for local Democratic campaigns back in his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, this was like getting called up to, the big leagues, or if not the big leagues, it was getting called up to the AAA. And right before he was killed, he was preparing to take a job on the Clinton campaign. He was going to do similar. He was going to do similar work for the DNC that on the Clinton campaign that he was doing for the DNC. So, that's one. I know what you're going to say. It's one reason why, that he was some kind of anti-Clinton whistleblower doesn't make sense, because why would he then go work for the campaign?
Right. But yet this story was one that was propagated by Julian Assange, and later on, Fox News, the Trump campaign. How did this get out of control in your mind?
I trace it mostly back to August of 2016, an interview that Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, this radical transparency group that publishes sort of raw, leaked information about governments and corporations and powerful individuals. I trace it back to an interview that Julian Assange gave then. At this moment in 2016, August of 2016, the Seth Rich conspiracy theories had kind of had a small moment right after he'd been killed in July of that year. And then they started to ebb a little bit. And there was a moment there where it seemed like, as Seth's brother put it to me in one of our interviews, it seemed like the internet was just about to move on to something else, as it often does. The news cycle would move on. The online masses were going to find some other person or some other event to focus their attention on. In this moment,
Mm-hmm.
Assange gives an interview on Dutch television where he is asked about the source of these leaked DNC emails that WikiLeaks has just published that have thrown a whole nother variable into this already tumultuous presidential campaign. And as we would later find out, laid out by Robert Mueller's report, the Senate Intelligence Committee's report, a whole bunch of government investigations, cybersecurity analyses, etc., that this was an influence operation orchestrated by the Russian government to disrupt our election. Assange is asked about his sources, and he deflects, he dodges a little bit, and then he says that, our sources get concerned when they see things like the death of this DNC staffer in Washington, D.C. He even goes so far as to say Seth's name. He does not say Seth was the source, but he dangles Seth's name and the news of Seth's murder ever so slightly as to make people think that Seth was the source. He doesn't come out and say it, but it's this, it's this sort of insinuation. And that, I say in the book, is the first real super spreader event, if you will, for these online claims about Seth Rich. After that moment, they absolutely catch fire. Now, on the right-hand side of the political spectrum, you see supporters of then candidate Trump, future President Trump, online really mobilizing to promote what Assange has just said. Seth's name is trending. This is that moment I mentioned earlier when all of a sudden Seth Rich's name is trending on Twitter. And I'm sitting here looking at Twitter saying, why is this guy that I sort of crossed paths with in DC, why is his name trending on Twitter? What on earth is going on? And that is the moment when it really catches fire and it takes off on the political right. It goes all the way from a hashtag on Twitter to the primetime airwaves, briefly, of Fox News, where a host named Eric Bolling, basically says, "Oh, this wasn't a robbery." Speaking about Seth's murder, this was a hit. This was a hit. He says that on live television. That's the big moment when this theory not only jumps from left to right, but also takes off in a way that it had not up to that point in time.
We're getting short on time. We want to make sure that you're asking questions in the Q&A for Andy to answer once we're done. But a few other questions. I just wanted to, pivot to the family at that point. I mean, at this point, the family gets involved from a legal standpoint. Can you tell me about what they did, and then also, frankly, how they're doing in the aftermath of all this? Because it just seems like in the history, maybe of this country, I can't think of any family that's had to deal with this specific problem. Maybe outside of the parents of kids killed in these school shootings like Sandy Hook.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Seth's family, his parents specifically, and his one brother, an older brother, are the soul of this book. The book is about a lot of things. It's about politics in the social media era. It's about how conspiracy theories come to be and how they spread, how they've really saturated American politics. It's about media. It's about the justice system as well, and the justice system's attempt to catch up with this, hyper fast social media era in which we live. But at its absolutely fundamental core, this is a book about family. It's a book about a family not only living through one unimaginable event, which is the death of a son or a brother, but it's then watching that unimaginable event become a wholly different thing, transformed into something you could not again imagine, which is a viral hashtag, a meme, a rallying cry on Fox News, a story that reaches all the way into the CIA and the White House. I mean, this is this is completely beyond the realm of possibility if you are Joel and Mary Rich, Seth's parents. Joel and Mary live in Omaha, Nebraska. They're wonderful people. I've spent tons of time with them. I talked to them earlier today, even. They are not political people. They are not Beltway insiders. They don't talk to the press, or at least they didn't until all of this happened. I mean, that's not who they were. They're like most people in America. They're like my parents, you know. They just, this was not their world, but they were thrust into it because of everything that happened that I lay out in the book. And you know, there is a really key moment about 2/3 of the way through the book where Joel and Mary face a decision that they never thought they would have to make. Fox News in the spring of 2017 has just published and then retracted a story about Seth that said he was this DNC leaker. Retracted the story because basically everyone in a position to know said this is false. Sean Hannity had spent a week promoting this false notion to millions of people. There's no putting that genie back into the bottle. There's no erasing all of this from the internet. That's not how the internet works. So Joel and Mary Rich faced this question. What can we do to protect Seth's name and defend the truth? What options do we have, if not in the court of public opinion, then in the court of law, to try and protect who Seth was and set the record straight? What they end up doing is these two parents from Omaha, Nebraska, sue Fox News, arguably the most powerful media company in America, if not the world.
Right.
They sue Fox News, and there's this, you know, years-long legal battle, and I get into all of this in the book because this is really Act 3 of the book, and this is really the I would say, if there's a hopeful strand of this book, you know, is there hope for truth? Is there hope for basic human decency? That's what this passage of the book is about. And in the end, you know, I won't fully go into how this is resolved in case people are going to read it, and hope they do. But in the end, you know, Joel and Mary Rich of Omaha, Nebraska get some justice. They get some accountability. And it's a really incredible story that, you know, it just has not happened to that many people, other than, as you said, Jamil, like the parents of those children who were killed in Sandy Hook. It's a very small group of people who've had to go through this. And in each case, you know, they've really had to sort of struggle their way to find solutions, to find some peace of mind for having gone through all this.
But sadly, I wish I could be more optimistic, but I definitely feel like more parents are going to have to endure something similar, given the way that, you know, certain folks in our politics fans conspiracy theories and disinformation. I want to know what you learned about that specifically in the process of writing this book. Anything new in terms of your insights on that particular topic and these broader themes that are affecting our politics today?
I embedded with a group of lawyers who, in the course of this story, in the 4 or 5 years that I cover in the book, decided that they wanted to take on this problem of viral disinformation, of harmful conspiracy theories that upturn people's lives. These lawyers just were watching things happening in American politics, whether it was what's happened to Seth Rich and his family, the Pizzagate conspiracy theory here in DC, and even up to this day, looking at the threats that election workers have faced, like those down in Fulton County, Georgia. You know, there are a growing number of people who, especially these lawyers, who said, well, something's got to be done. Something has to help. We have to do something to help these people, because again, there doesn't seem to be a good way in the court of public opinion to push back against this misinformation, disinformation. So we're going to need to come up with a strategy in the court of law to do that. And in the course of the book, these lawyers, or two of them in particular, one's named Mike Gottlieb, another Meryl Gavrnsky, who worked for Aaron Rich, Seth's brother, who ultimately had to file a lawsuit of his own because he became the victim of conspiracy theories. They have come up with almost like a playbook to push back on the spread of this harmful disinformation. They, I think, and some other lawyers that have teamed up with them are at the vanguard of really thinking about how do we, in a nation where the First Amendment and free speech rights are paramount, that's why it's the First Amendment, how do we achieve some kind of justice, some kind of accountability for people like Seth Rich's family, for these election workers who've been accused of doing horrible things that they absolutely did not do. So it was really interesting to embed with them and to see how these lawyers in real time figured out how do we find solutions, find answers, strategies to this really big problem, and a problem that seems to continue to grow. No other journalist was doing this. No other journalist was watching these lawyers work in real time. And I think that they are some of the heroes of this book. There are antagonists in the book for sure, but there are heroes as well. People who, in the face of some pretty incredible and unimaginable situations, said, we still have to stand up for the truth. The truth still matters. Human decency still matters. So, those are also characters in the book who give me hope, and hopefully will give the readers hope, that someone is thinking about answers to these problems. Someone is thinking about how do we better protect against these, online memes that can really damage people's lives.
Yeah, and I think that's the theme of two of our questions from our audience. Actually, one, sort of asking, is there a hope for transparency in the media landscape in their post-truth conspiracy age? Basically pointing the attention at us in our business. What changes need to be made for more transparent media? But also, I would add a second question, which is one of our audience members asking if you struck any particular broader political meaning or metaphor for his ambitions, or the aftermath of Seth's death. I think that I think those two things kind of go hand in hand, because not just in terms of coming away from this book with greater revelations about America and about Seth, but also frankly looking towards the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the second one first. The bigger revelation, or the bigger takeaway that I have from this book, I mean, something I spent 5, almost 6 years working on. So obviously lots of big takeaways here, but the biggest one I would say is there is a real struggle right now over the fundamental ingredients, the essential DNA of American democracy. You can't have a democracy without facts and science and a shared set of truths that we all that we all agree on, and then from there duke it out over how you think those should be interpreted, or how they should be applied toward policy, toward how you raise your family, toward where you send your kids to school. That's fine. That's what makes America so fantastic, such a beacon in the world. Is from there you get to take the path that you want. You get to speak your mind, associate with who you want, et cetera, et cetera. The struggle right now, though, is that we are approaching a sort of choose your own reality moment in American life, where people aren't taking a set of facts, a set of data, shared experiences, and then debating over that. We're debating over the actual facts, the foundation of a democracy. And that is what happened in Seth's story. It's what happened around the 2020 election. I mean, there's a reason in the book that I kind of connect these flashpoints together: Seth Rich to Pizzagate to QAnon to the quote unquote big lie, as some people refer to it. There are commonalities there. And again, it's this question of, are we going to keep truth and facts and science at the center of our politics, our education system, our culture, or are we going to completely cleave off, where it's almost like we're talking different languages? Now, that's a struggle. I say that because I think it's ongoing. I don't think it's a fait accompli. I don't think that the die is cast, that we are fated to do this. But I think it's incumbent on everyone to know that that is what's happening, and to choose the side of truth and facts and science. And, getting to the first question, what can the media do better? I think we can do lots of things better, but I think transparency, which I think was in the question, is an essential ingredient to that. I was talking about this with someone earlier today. I think journalists need to do a better job of not only reporting new information, new facts, bringing to light the kinds of information, the viewpoints, perspectives that will help our readers make sense of this insane world that it feels like we're living in. But I also think that we need to be more transparent about how we do what we do. We live in a time, and this book is absolutely illuminates this. We live in a time when a lot of people say that they're journalists. A lot of people claim the mantle of an investigative reporter or a muckraker. And a decent number of them are not actually journalists. They are selling something, or they have an agenda, or they just want to score points for their political party, tribe, whatever. I think we as journalists need to be more transparent about how we do our jobs, why we pick the stories we pick, how we ensure that what we're reporting is accurate, and that we've been fair to the people we're writing about, even if those people don't want us to unearth the information that we've unearthed. And I think that would help repair some of that trust. It's not going to fix the problem by any means, but I like that the questioner talked about transparency, because I think we can do more, and that would help people see, both determine who's a real journalist and who's not, but also it would help them understand where we're coming from. And I think it would rebuild some of that trust in the process.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, frankly, events like this, discussions like this, help illuminate people as to the mechanics of how you get something like this book done. And I really just want to thank you for helping, explain it to them also, but also just talk to me about it. I really, I can't say, enjoying the read is not really the word I would want to use, but I definitely gained so much from it, and just both as a journalist and as a citizen. So thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
I mean, it's a privilege and a real treat to talk about it with you. And, I feel like every time I talk about it, it's some new facet of the book comes out, some new idea or theme, or an echo with our current political moment, our current sort of national moment comes through just from having these conversations. So, I hope people pick it up. I hope people read it. I really wrote it to be the little phrase I've come up with is a sort of a page turner with purpose, a story that you will move through like a thriller, but that you will feel illuminated and educated, and maybe see the world a little more anew after reading it. So we're both on Twitter, and I love hearing from people on Twitter about the book. I'm at Andy Kroll. What are you at, Jamil?
At Jamil Smith, Jamil. So So yes, definitely. If you have questions for us, about how we do what we do, don't hesitate to reach out. And we love intellectual honesty. We love people who are thinking critically, both about the world and about our business. So please let us know. And thank you again, Sebastian, for the opportunity.
Of course.
To both be here.
Of course. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Andy, for sharing this really important story with us. And thank you, Jamil, for moderating this wonderful conversation. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to our partner, Miami Book Fair, and to everyone here for watching and for reading. I really hope that you'll support Andy and Books and Books by ordering your copy of A Death on W Street, Murder of Seth Rich, and The Age of Conspiracy. You can get that book by clicking on the link below, and you can order that book today online, or you can also pass by one of our stores and pick it up in person. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a great night. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you did. And yeah, hope you have a great night, and thank you guys so much again.
Yep. Thank you, Sebastian. Thanks, Books and Books. One of my favorites.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Okay.
Thank you, and good night, everyone.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night.